Hey everyone, today I'm back in Lost Ark with an updated video on my main character's build. I did one a couple of weeks, or I guess months ago at this point, and I said I was going to do an updated version of that whenever I did get all of my characters to a place where they would probably stay for a long time, because in the old video they were only really good to do like Argos and maybe Vault on normal mode, but since I got all of my characters to 1445 now, 3 engravings wasn't really going to cut it anymore to get into party finders, so everybody pretty much has some new accessories, and I've also started working on their relic armor, so that you can see what choices I went with. Let's get started with my Sorceress. This is my current main. The reason why I say current is because I'm planning on potentially changing main to Arcanist, but I'm waiting until the balance patch hits on the west to see if I actually really like the changes as much as I think I will, and then I won't probably actually change main until Belshazzar comes out, but that's kind of like my thought process behind it. So because she's my main, I of course had to get her ready for Clown, which means that she's 1475. I'm planning on pushing her to 1490 to just make it more comfortable, and in case I do end up sticking with Sorceress, then she's also ready for Belshazzar Gate 1 and 2, so that's kind of like the next plan that I'm going to be doing, getting her to 1490. By then the balance patch may be hit, and then I might also be able to see if I do want to end up changing to Arcanist, yes or no. In terms of stats, went full spec with some crit on the necklace. Because I'm running double like legendary engraving, I can cheap on the necklace, so that I only need +5 on it. So that meant I was able to get a pretty decent quality necklace for a very cheap price, and it's also 531, so that helped with my engravings as well. As for the armor, went with 6-piece Nightmare, pretty decent set for Sorceress. For engravings, just went with the standard meta engravings. In terms of like how important they are, Igniter first, then All Out Attack, then Hitmaster, then Grudge, and then Cursed Doll. I think that's like the best way to go about it, because these 3 are very good for Sorceress, and there's also no negatives attached to that, and then you can start going like Grudge and then Cursed Doll. As for gems, everything's level 7 except 1 cooldown gem. I've got damage gems for my 6 most important skills, so that's not including the flex skill, which I'll talk about in a second as well, and then also my synergy, so those are the only 2 that don't have a damage gem, and then 5 of these skills also have a cooldown gem, with the exception of Rhyme Arrow. So as you can see, everything else has a damage and a cooldown gem. The only important cooldown gem here is the Doomsday one. This one is a level 9. Reason being is because it makes it very comfortable to do a double Doomsday burst window. As long as you're running crit and not swiftness, you need a higher cooldown gem to make that possible. And then for cars, I'm running Lost Windcliff. In terms of skills, this is the synergy, so you can just like copy the tripods, I guess. I'm not going to talk about them too long, so you can just copy if you want to do that. Something that's kind of important to note, I guess, is that this is an important tripod to get, and same thing for Prostcall. The Enlightenment tripods are definitely the most important ones to get, in my opinion. We have our Doomsday, Punishing Strike, and then Esoteric Reaction. Now, outside of this, there's like 1 flex skill that you can take depending on the content that you're doing. I was doing Vicus yesterday, so that is why I have Squall. Whenever I do Valtan, I take Ice Shower, because this one has built-in tenacity in case I end up whiffing my skill, then I don't get knocked off the arena. And when I do Ice Turtle, for example, I take Inferno for the enhanced weak point over here, and then Charge Flame as well as Fire Supplement, so that it goes faster. But that's kind of like your flex skill. You just take whatever you need, depending on the content that you're doing. And if you don't need a counter, you don't need a weak point skill, I just take Rift Acceleration instead to have it as a damage skill. This also generates a decent amount of gauge, so it's still a good skill to have nevertheless. And then we have my Scrapper, currently sitting at 4045 relic set. I'm working towards the Earth's Entropy relic set. I'm just gonna go 6-piece with that. Oh, I just noticed that I actually have her on her Chaos Dungeon build right now, so let me quickly switch that over. In terms of stats, I went kind of 50-50 with crit and swiftness, a little bit more on the crit side, but doesn't really matter too much. I could go either way. As for engravings, Grudge, Keen Blunt, Class Engraving, and then Adrenaline. Fortunately, I've got like 1 Malice in there, but because I do have high swiftness, I don't really feel the movement speed reduction, to be honest. And since I'm not going Raid Captain, don't really feel it too much. Keen Blunt technically should switch that out for probably Cursed Doll and then Ambush Master as my level 5 engraving, or like the 5th engraving, I guess you could say. Because Keen Blunt doesn't stack too nicely with Earth's Entropy, but because my crit rate is still so high, because of Adrenaline and my high crit stat, Keen Blunt is still going to be viable even at 5-piece Entropy, so I probably won't be switching it out unless I need to like get the complete new accessories, of course. In terms of gems, mix of mostly level 5s. I'm like currently working towards getting her level 7s. It's very simple right now. Like I'm trying to get my Arcanist level 7 gems, but every gem that is going into damage is just going onto my scrapper right now. In terms of where they are, basically all 6 of my important skills have like a damage and a cooldown gem except Roundup Sweep. Because this thing has like a chance to reset its own cooldown anyways, but everything else is like damage plus cooldown, and that is then of course excluding my synergy skill as well as my gap closer, because those don't really need it, as they don't really do much damage, and I don't need the cooldown on them either. And then of course Lost Wind Cliff again as well. In terms of the skills, Charging Blow, this is the gap closer. Battering Fists, one of the damage skills. Well, most of the skills are basically just damage skills for this one. We have Roundup Sweep. Like there's multiple ways you can go here. Some people I've seen take single hit, like where it just does more damage on single target. I like to gamble with the resets, as it can actually become kind of fun. And then you also have your counter up more often in case it does proc. Synergy skill. And we have this one. And then our final skill right here. The only thing you have to pay attention to with this one is that you use it when you have enough gauge. Because if you don't have enough gauge to use it, then it also does less damage, like if your gauge isn't almost full. And then we have my Destroyer. For this one I went full crit with some swiftness on the necklace. You can go like 50 crit, 25 spec, 25 swiftness. I went with like 75 crit for now. I might change that when like ancient accessories come around, I'm not quite sure yet. But for now I'm going to stick with it like this. Relic set, I went Earth Entropy again, but I actually kind of made a mistake, because Earth Entropy and Nightmare Flower are like right underneath each other on the selection screen, and I was kind of too hasty, so I didn't pay attention, so I accidentally bought a 2-piece Nightmare Flower set as well. Now actually, technically, a bit on copium here, this is a damage increase, because currently I don't need the crit rate from Earth Entropy. Like if you see it, the 4-piece set gives 17% crit rate, but I'm already getting 15% from my Argos set, because I still have the 2-piece Argos set for now. So because I don't need the crit rate right now, and all of Destroyer skills use mana, technically getting the 2 Nightmare Flower set is a 12% damage increase that I otherwise wouldn't have if I went 4-piece Entropy. So now I'm just basically waiting until I can craft my 6 set, and then I'll just use the gear conversion thingy to switch over the set to a 6-piece Entropy when I can do that, so I don't have to spend the extra gold, because otherwise that's like 2000 gold down the drain, and I'd rather not do that. But I'll still see whenever I get to that, because I'm not honing my alts anymore at this point. Maybe I'll just be kind of rich by the time that I get my 6-piece set, so then I might just not really care about spending the 2000 gold to just craft a new set instead. But yeah, that's kind of what happened there, I guess. In terms of engravings, kind of standard again as well. I have got Grudge. Supercharge is still kind of necessary on Destroyer, especially if you go Rage Hammer. This might change with the balance patch, if you do end up going like the non-charge actions version, but we'll have to see about that. I'm probably just gonna stick with Supercharge, because I do quite enjoy the Destroyer gameplay right now. Then we have Curse Doll, and then the Awakening engraving just kind of snuck in there, which isn't a bad thing, because Destroyer's Awakening is quite good. Damage reduction, super armor, all of that good stuff. So that's why I decided to just kind of leave it in there. It's kind of just an extra anyways. In terms of my gems, I have 4 damage gems for my purple skills, and then cooldown gems for everything else. Everything has a cooldown gem except Earth Eater. I think that's the only one that I didn't get a cooldown gem for, because I didn't really feel the need for that. And then cards again, not Earth Entropy, Lost Wind Cliff. In terms of skills, Heavy Crush at 4, because this is just there to like quickly generate 1 gravity core for you. Then we have our counter, looks like this. Full Swing, one of your damage skills. Perfect Swing, the other damage skill. The Gap Closer over here, which you can switch out for Power Strike if you want to do that, but I do enjoy having my Gap Closer. Endure Pain, this thing is OP, so definitely take it. You could take the Guaranteed Core instead, in case like the extra radius isn't really doing it for you. Like this just makes it easier to land. This makes it so that even if you don't land it, you still get your 3 cores. So it's kind of like up to you there, depending on what you want to take. Then we have Earth Eater, and then Seismic Hammer as the last one. Tripods might potentially change a little bit as we get our balance patch, but I'm not entirely sure about that just yet. For now, this is what my Destroyer looks like. And then we have my Striker. For this one, the stats are a little bit different, so I have like 25 crit, 25 spec, and then 50 swiftness. High swiftness is nice because it just makes the rotation flow a whole lot better. This also means that I went with the esoteric flurry build and not the death blow one, although I can definitely see why people like going for death blow instead, because of, like, during Vicus at least, I feel like I'm not really using all of my skills all that often because there's just a lot of downtime with doing patterns and that kind of stuff. So I can definitely see why people would go death blow, but for now I'm going to be sticking with esoteric flurry. In terms of set, again, Earth Entropy, I have a lot of back attacking classes, so that's why I went with that. In terms of engravings, Grudge, Cursed Doll, kind of like the two meta ones. I went with Ambushmaster because my crit rate is not high enough for Keen Blunt. If you remember back to the old video, I went both Adrenaline plus Precise Dagger to make Keen Blunt viable, but I don't really like using Precise Dagger that much anymore, because it's just kind of like a waste, I feel like, because you're losing so much crit damage, I mean. So that is why I decided to just put in Ambushmaster instead. Then we have Adrenaline at level 2 and then Esoteric Flurry at level 1 because the class engraving is most efficient at level 1 to have like a 4x3 setup like this. Would still like to get a little bit more crit rate, but I guess I will get some once I get my 4-piece entropy because that boosts it by another 17%. In terms of gems, I just have 4 damage gems for my esoteric skills, and then I have cooldown gems for pretty much everything except my gap closer. That's the only one that I do not have a cooldown gem for. And then cards, again, crit rate set with Lost Windcliff. In terms of skills, this is one of our damage skills right here. This is one of our mobility as well as like buffing skills, because this does give a attack speed buff. One of our gauge generators, I guess Sky Shattering Blow also generates some gauge for us. Another one of our spenders. This is the most powerful spender, and I got very lucky because I have this one at level 5 as well. Another gauge generator. This is our gap closer, so the only thing we care about here is the mobility tripod. And then this is our final spender as well. Now my Bard is a little bit of a mess, as you'll see in just a bit as well. So again, sitting at 40-45, but the problem was that I just kept hitting pity on my weapon. So my weapon's only plus 15, and I overleveled both my chest piece and my panties. Those are both plus 18. This actually ended up like going through faster than my weapon. Like this thing was literally the last thing that I upgraded to get her to 40-45. So that's just kind of why I went with it. But because it's a support, people don't really care that your weapon isn't upgraded. Yes, my damage buff will be a bit weaker, but my shields and heals will be stronger, so it kind of evens out. Full swiftness as well as some specialization. In terms of relic set, I went with the Swamp of Yearning one. That's pretty much the only support one out there really, especially when you're playing support itself. In terms of engravings, a little bit on the cheaper side because a lot of the like Bard engravings were quite expensive, and because it's an alt I don't want to spend like 50,000 gold on just getting her accessories, and also because it's a support, people will take you anyways, so that's why I kind of went with that. Desperate Salvation, Awakening, Expert, those are like the 3 important ones. Honestly, just Desperate Salvation and Awakening are the 2 important ones. Anything past that is just kind of extra. Expert will just help with the healing and shielding. You don't really need it, but it's nice if you're going to be throwing out a lot of heals, which in Party Finder you tend to do. And Heavy Armor is just a comfort engraving. You don't really need it. Like literally, my Bard with level 0 Heavy Armor is going to be tankier than my Sorceress or my Arcanist because they're using Grudge. So having Heavy Armor on top of that is just going to make you very tanky compared to like what I am used to from playing most DPS classes, because my Striker, for example, is also a very squishy class, or at least it feels like that to me, because I do have Grudge and Cursed Doll on it. So you definitely do feel the difference when you start playing support, and then having Heavy Armor on top of that is just going to be even nicer. So that's why I didn't bother trying to get this to level 5, because that would just have been way too expensive. So that is why I kept it at level 2, and this is still making me plenty tanky, so don't really care about getting this to level 5. Anything past this is like maybe drops of ether that I could get as well, but it's all just extra bonuses that you don't really need, and because it's an alt and people will take you anyways, I just decided to stick with this. In terms of gems, literally just all cooldown gems. I do have a damage gem on Sound Shock and Soundholic, but those are the only 2. And then, well, I do have a tier 2 damage gem in here for Heavenly Tune. But again, it's not really that important. Damage on supports isn't that important. It's mainly the cooldown gems that you're looking for. In terms of cards, just the max HP set, the Field Boss one, because that's all you really need until you get fully awakened Lost Windcliff, but that's probably going to take quite a while. In terms of skills, Sound Shock, this is your synergy skill, or like your marking skill, I guess you could call it. Guardian Tune, little tip right here, if you're doing Vicus, turn this off, because otherwise it could make it so that in Gate 3, if someone throws a sleep bomb at someone that is like simp mode, I guess, then it will actually like block the debuff from the sleep bomb. So if you're doing Vicus Gate 3, turn on Agile Defense instead, or level it down, so you can't take a level 3 tripod. I was doing Valton yesterday, so I've written Buckshot on right now. So as you can see, Tenacity, Agile cast for that. If I'm raiding, I use Rhapsody of Light as well for the super armor that it gives, as well as the protection that I can give both to myself as well as my teammates, so that they take less damage. One of your big gauge generators is also a counter. One of your damage buffs, a shielding skill, and then we have our second damage buff. Now whenever I'm not doing Legion raids, I like to switch out Rhapsody of Light for Stigma, just because it's another source of keeping up my mark, as well as the melody increase, like you generate a lot more gauge with this one, so that's why I like to take that. And then when I'm not running my counter, I run Soundholic instead, because this also provides a lot of stagger damage. So for other fights, like for example for Valtan, I like running double counter, but if I'm doing something like Vicus, I usually don't run double counter, because like Rhythm Buckshot isn't super long range either, and when I'm doing it on Sorceress, I already take Squall because I want the extra range, so that's why I just stick with Soundholic, and there's also like 2 stagger checks in that fight, and Soundholic is your biggest stagger skill, so I like helping out with that one as well. So that is Bard. And then we have come to the newest addition to my main roster, which is Arcanist, which is also kind of under consideration of actually becoming my main in the near future. I say near future, probably more like 3 months from now or something, because it'll take a while for her to catch up with my Sorceress. In terms of item level, if I do end up making the switch to her, it'll probably be around the time that Belshazzar comes out or something like that. So in terms of her stats, I went full spec with some crit as well on the necklace. So this is going to be for the Empress build. If you go Emperor, you'll want to go full swiftness with some crit instead. In terms of her set, I'm going Nightmare Flower because she does have a lot of mana issues in the early game. Once you get the Nightmare Flower set, it actually makes her so much more fun to play, because you can also switch out Conviction Judgment runes to Galewind runes, because you need Conviction Judgment to make it so that you don't run out of mana before you get the Relic set. Once you can switch that to Galewind runes, she actually feels a whole lot better. In terms of engravings, I'm doing a bit of a weird setup, I guess, for now, and that is because I am kind of hoping that they make Empress Grace level 3 better. So on the Korean patch right now, like the balance patch that just happened, they already did it for Peacemaker, for Gunslinger, that they made level 3 better. I'm kind of hoping that they do the same for Empress Grace, so I decided to invest in the class engraving books. If not, it'll just give me a cheap 5x3 setup if I do want to go for that. For now, I'm going to stick to this. I am thinking of potentially switching out 2 accessories, because if I switch out 2 accessories, I can also get Adrenaline to level 3 if I want to do that. And then I have a pretty decent 5x3 to do Clown. If you want like a better 5x3, then you want to do Empress Grace level 1, Adrenaline level 2, so that's like 1 engraving, and then you switch this out for like a Cursed Doll 3. That's kind of the best you can do there. But because I'm still getting used to playing Arcanist, and because she's also a very squishy character, because she's a mage and she's kind of like a melee character, I kind of wanted to steer away from using both Cursed Doll and Grudge at the moment together, because it kind of feels bad like that. If there's anything that I would change out in this build going into the next patch, like the balance patch, it would be switching out Barricade for Cursed Doll instead. Because there is a chance that using Wealth runes is going to be better than using the Protection runes, which is what you currently do with Arcanist, to just kind of get like a cheap engraving in Barricade. So that is like the only thing that I'm considering changing when the balance patch does come out, but I'll just play around with it a bit when it comes out, and well, hopefully a few weeks from now. The sooner the better. And then like 5x3 would just be this with Adrenaline level 3. If I do end up switching to Wealth runes instead of Protection runes for my red skills, then I would replace Barricade with Cursed Doll. And then of course you can also do Empress 1, Adrenaline 2, and then slot in Cursed Doll in here anyways. If you're not using Barricade in a 5x3 setup with like level 1 Empress and level 2 Adrenaline, not quite sure what you would take as like your 6th engraving, sort of. Like I guess you could kind of take Raid Captain, but it's not that amazing. Maybe Increased Mass. Not 100% sure on that, so that's probably why I'll stick with Barricade for now. Or if I do end up doing a 5x3, keep Empress Grace at level 3 if I am switching out Barricade. In terms of my gems, currently working on getting them all to level 7. As I mentioned, every time I get a damage gem, it's going to my scrapper, Still need 2 more cooldown gems and then she is done. Damage gems are just going to be for my 3 red skills, and then literally all other 8 are going to have cooldown gems. And then for my cards, I'm running Lost Windcliff. In terms of my skills, this is what she currently looks like. Level 11 and level 12 skills aren't important on her, because at level 55 and 60, her ruin skills get like an automatic upgrade, like the detonating of the stacks. Oh, I actually just noticed I have 6 skill points that I can use. Let me just quickly do that. But at level 55 and 60, the detonating of the ruin stacks on a boss gets an automatic upgrade. So you don't need to get like level 11 and level 12 skills for that. So like the most important thing you can do is just get everything to level 10. And then once you have that, that is when you can start upgrading. So Quad Hydra, this is also the one where I use my legendary Galewind rune on. Just these are the tripods. Serendipity, this is one of the skills that is potentially getting changed out when the balance patch hits, because I'm going to be replacing that with 4 of a kind, because this thing right here is getting changed so that it gives 44% crit rate instead. The problem right now with Serendipity is that it has a crit damage tripod over here, so if it does crit, it does a lot of damage, but it doesn't have built-in crit rate, so it actually doesn't crit all that often. So that's why I'm kind of thinking to switching to 4 of a kind when the balance patch hits. Then we have our synergy right here, expose weakness. I think the max roll guide like recommends you take this, but the distance that you travel barely changes. It already goes super far, so that's why I went with like the crit rate tripod instead, to make it easier to have uptime on your crit synergy. Like with this combined with return, who also has the crit rate tripod, you're going to have full uptime on your synergy skill, which is going to be very useful for the rest of your team. Also, something that I didn't know when I first started playing her, the crit rate that you see on here is just for the return skill. It doesn't give you like a 40% crit rate bonus for like 5 seconds. It's only for the return skill itself that you get 40% extra crit rate. So that's something that I did not know about. Then first red skill, I have like level 5 crit rate on here. That's the most important one to get. Like Arcana skills super hard, or Arcanist I guess, skills super hard with tripod levels, and the crit rate tripod ones are the most important in my opinion, so that's why I decided to get this one at level 5. The rest are at level 4. Spiral Edge, again this over here. Call of Destiny, this is another skill that's going to change when the balance patch hits. I'll probably put it like this to get another source of crit damage. That means I'm gonna have crit damage buff up whenever I use a red skill, instead of like having it like this. The reason why we're changing is because this quick draw tripod is getting nerfed by half. So it starts at 10% and then goes all the way to 20% at max level. Right now it's at 20% at base. So that's why that's getting changed. And then this is just like to throw it out faster, do a little bit more damage. I think the reason why you take this is because it now throws 2 cards, so you have like twice the chance to proc the quick draw tripod. Return already talked about. And then we have Secret Garden, again, level 5 crit rate tripod, and then I just have whatever I could get over here. So what I'm planning to change in the future is 4 of a kind. Gonna be putting in Swift Prep so that it has a chance to reset itself. Then I'm taking bonus damage, and then I'm taking the crit rate tripod whenever this does change. You can also take this one where it has a chance to not consume stacks, but I feel like that's going to add too much RNG into the rotation. There is, however, a build out there that people are testing with 4 red skills, where you do take this and then you throw this one out before using a second red skill. So you're really gambling that it doesn't eat the stacks, but I think it's like 75% chance to not consume stacks at max level, so that is why people kind of go with that. It's like the ultimate gambler build, I guess you could say, and Arcanist is kind of a gambler, but I'm just gonna go with the card enhancement one for now, and then we'll see if I do end up switching to this eventually at some point in the future, but not going to be something for me personally, not immediately at least. I'll just stick with the guaranteed damage for now when the balance patch does hit. So that is my Arcanist for now. And then we've reached the end of all of my characters, so this is going to be my main roster for the foreseeable future. There are 2 classes that are kind of in consideration to sneak in there, which is going to be Artist as well as Aeromancer. Both of those classes I am very interested in. If I do end up playing either of them, then my Bard is going to be replaced by Artist, and for Aeromancer I honestly don't have a clue who I would boop out of my main 6. Maybe my Striker, maybe Destroyer, I'm not 100% sure yet, but we'll see when we get there. Those classes won't be coming out for a very long time from now. so that's not really something that I'm going to be worried about. This is how my characters are going to be looking like for the foreseeable future, because I feel like they're pretty decently geared now, and because I'm planning to keep them at 1445 for a little while as they farm their relic armor and as they farm me some gold as well. I'm just going to keep them like that because they are more than fine to run Vault on hard mode and Ficus normal mode. So that's going to do it for me. So I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.